the heavy barrel of a suppressed pistol pressed into the soft skin beneath my jaw, smelling of gun oil and cold rain. My knuckles were still white from gripping the steering wheel of my dented sedan, which now sat wedged diagonally across the narrow, rain-slicked boulevard, pinning the nose of a $300,000 black SUV against the concrete barrier. A man with eyes like polished flint leaned into my open window, his tailored charcoal sleeve brushing against my door. "You picked a very expensive day to be in a hurry," he whispered, the sound barely audible over the rhythmic thrum of the downpour against the roof. I looked into the rearview mirror and saw 3 other black vehicles lurch to a halt, men in dark suits spilling out like ink into water, their hands reaching inside their jackets. I hadn't just caused a traffic jam, I had trapped a predator in a cage of my own making. 30 minutes ago, my biggest problem was a late shift and a fading gas light. Now, my car was a metal coffin, and the man holding the gun to my throat was the reason the city's sirens never stopped screaming. I didn't know then that this single act of road rage defiance was about to tear the lid off a 3-generation blood feud. This is how a Tuesday morning commute turned into a hunt where the prize was my breath. By the time the sun sets, the police won't even be looking for my body, because the man standing in the rain owns the dirt they'd have to dig through. I slammed my palm against the horn, the blaring sound echoing off the brick canyon of the alleyway. The black SUV behind me surged forward, its bumper tapping mine with a sickening crunch of plastic. I didn't move. I shifted into park and pulled the emergency brake. I was tired of being pushed, tired of the luxury cars treating the lane like a private runway. I stepped out of my car, the rain instantly soaking through my thin waitress uniform. I marched toward the tinted window of the beast behind me, my finger pointed, a scream forming in my throat. The window didn't roll down. Instead, the rear door swung open with a pneumatic hiss. A man stepped out. He didn't use an umbrella. He stood 6'4" in a suit that cost more than my college tuition, his dark hair slicked back. He didn't look at the dented bumper. He looked at me as if I were a ghost he hadn't decided to exorcise yet. 2 men moved to flank him, their earpieces glinting in the dull light. "Move the car," the man said. It wasn't a request. It was an ultimate truth. "You hit me," I yelled, my voice cracking as a shiver raced down my spine. "You don't get to just shove people off the road because you have a V12 and a driver." His eyes scanned the street behind us, then flicked to the rooftops. His jaw tightened. He reached out, his hand wrapping around my upper arm with the force of a hydraulic press. He pulled me toward the SUV. "You have 5 seconds to realize you are standing in a kill zone, or you can die on the asphalt." Before I could scream, a sharp crack echoed through the air. A spiderweb of frost bloomed on the windshield of my sedan. A sniper. The man, Dante, tackled me to the ground, his body a wall of solid muscle. He didn't grunt as we hit the wet pavement. He simply pulled a radio from his belt. "Contact. Northeast balcony. Sweep and clear." The street erupted. Automatic fire shredded the air, the sound like 1,000 hammers hitting tin. Dante dragged me behind the rear wheel of the SUV, his hand never leaving my collar. I saw my sedan, my only way home, dissolve under a hail of lead. "Who are you?" I gasped, the smell of cordite stinging my nose. "I'm the man who's going to keep you alive long enough to regret blocking my exit," he snapped. He pulled a heavy handgun from a shoulder holster and checked the chamber. He looked at me, his gaze lingering on the name tag pinned to my damp chest. "Stay low, Clara. If you run, you're just target practice." He stood up, firing 3 precise shots toward the balcony. I watched a figure tumble from the 3rd floor, hitting a dumpster with a heavy, hollow thud. Dante didn't blink. He grabbed my hand, his palm rough and hot against my frozen skin, and threw me into the back seat of the SUV. The interior smelled of expensive leather and ozone. As the door slammed shut, the driver floored it, the engine roaring like a wounded animal as we jumped the curb, leaving my ruined car and my old life behind in the gutter. If you believe Clara's defiance was the spark that either saves her or destroys her, hit the like button so the algorithm knows this story is just beginning. The SUV veered into an underground parking garage, the tires screaming against the polished concrete. Dante didn't wait for the car to stop. He stepped out, pulling me with him. We moved toward a private elevator. The 2 guards who had been with him were gone, staying behind to sanitize the scene. The elevator rose in silence. I watched the floor numbers climb. 40, 50, 60. When the doors opened, we were in a penthouse that looked more like a fortress. Monitors lined the walls, showing every angle of the street below. "Sit," Dante ordered, pointing to a leather chair. He walked to a wet bar and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid. He didn't offer me any. He downed it in one go and turned to a man sitting at a console. Find out who leaked the route. I want their head on the mahogany by midnight. It was the Gallo family, boss, the man replied, his fingers flying across the keys. They knew about the transport. They didn't expect the girl. Dante turned his eyes on me. He walked closer, stopping when his knees brushed mine. He leaned down, his hands resting on the arms of my chair, trapping me. The Gallos think you're a decoy. They think I put you there to block the line so my snipers could get a clear shot. They're going to come for you, Clara. They're going to try to peel the truth out of you. I was just going to work, I whispered, my fingers trembling as I gripped the edge of the seat. Work is over, he said. He reached out, his thumb tracing the bruise beginning to form on my arm where he'd grabbed me. His touch was lighter now, almost a caress. In this city there are two types of people, those who take and those who are taken. You chose to take the lane. Now you belong to the war. The monitor in the corner beeped. A red light flashed. Boss, we have 3 vehicles entering the perimeter. They're not ours. Dante didn't look at the screen. He looked at me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key. He dropped it into my lap. The safe is in the floor of the closet. Get in. Don't come out until you hear my voice. If you hear someone else's, use the second drawer. What's in the second drawer? I asked. He smiled, a cold, sharp flash of white teeth. A way to make sure they don't take you alive. The lights in the penthouse flickered and died. The only sound was the hum of the backup generator and the distant thwump of the elevator doors opening downstairs. Dante disappeared into the shadows, his presence vanishing as if he were made of the dark itself. I ran for the bedroom, the silver key biting into my palm. If this story broke your heart the way it broke mine, leave a like so I know to tell more stories like this. The closet was a cavern of silk suits and heavy coats. I found the floor safe, my fingers fumbling with the lock. I crawled inside, pulling a heavy fur coat over me. I sat in the dark, my breath coming in short, jagged hitches. Outside the world ended. I heard the muffled pop-pop-pop of suppressed fire. Then a heavy crash. Someone screamed, the sound cut short by a wet gurgle. I squeezed my eyes shut, my forehead resting against the cold metal of the safe. Then silence. It lasted forever. Minutes or hours I couldn't tell. Then footsteps. Heavy. Slow. They entered the bedroom. They moved toward the closet. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack them. The closet door groaned open. A sliver of light cut through the furs. Clara. It was Dante. His voice was ragged, wet. I pushed the coats aside and looked up. He was leaning against the doorframe, his white shirt now a map of scarlet stains. He held a bloody knife in one hand and a phone in the other. The Gallos are gone, he said, sliding down the doorframe until he sat on the floor. But the police are 5 minutes out. My men are compromised. I scrambled out of the safe, my hands going to his chest. I saw the wound, a deep gash across his ribs. You're bleeding. I noticed, he gritted out. He grabbed my wrist, his grip weak but desperate. Take the back stairs. There's a gray motorcycle in the alley. The code is 0-9-1-1. Go to the docks. Ask for the Albatross. I'm not leaving you here to die, I said. I didn't recognize my own voice. It wasn't the voice of the girl who had been late for her shift. It was the voice of the woman who had seen the dark and decided to walk through it. I hauled his arm over my shoulder. He was heavy, a dead weight of muscle and pride. We shuffled toward the back exit, the penthouse smelling of copper and expensive cologne. We reached the stairs just as the front door was kicked in. Freeze. Police. We didn't freeze. We dove into the stairwell, the door clicking shut behind us. We hit the alley, the rain still falling, washing the blood from Dante's hands. I found the motorcycle. I punched in the code. The engine purred to life. I helped him onto the back, his head resting against my shoulder. Drive, he whispered. I twisted the throttle. We roared out of the alley, weaving through the gridlock of the city. I looked in the side mirror and saw the blue and red lights reflecting off the wet asphalt. I wasn't just blocking traffic anymore. I was the getaway driver for the most dangerous man in the state. We reached the docks, the masts of the ships looking like gallows against the night sky. The Albatross was a sleek, black yacht with no lights. A man in a pea coat stood on the deck, a rifle slung over his shoulder. He saw Dante and jumped down to help. We thought you were done for, boss, the man said. The girl had other plans, Dante rasped. He looked at me as they started to pull him onto the boat. Get on, Clara. I have a life, I said, looking back at the city. I have a job. I have a cat. You have a target on your back, Dante said, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. The police think you're my accomplice. The gallows think you're my weakness. If you stay, you're dead by sunrise. I looked at the water, black and deep, then back at the man who had turned my world into a war zone. I stepped onto the boat. The engines hummed and we began to pull away from the pier. The city lights grew smaller, a glittering cage I had finally escaped. If you believe the quiet waitress was the real hero all along, drop a like so the algorithm knows the story matters. 3 weeks later. The Mediterranean sun was a hammer, beating down on the deck of the villa. I sat at a marble table, a laptop open in front of me. I wasn't looking at library finds. I was looking at the Hanoverian shipping manifest. Dante walked out onto the terrace, a fresh bandage visible beneath his open linen shirt. He looked at the screen, then at me. He leaned down and kissed the top of my head. The gallows just lost their 3rd shipment this week, he said. The Whisper is doing her job well. I told you, I said, my fingers dancing across the keys. People don't notice the things that block their way. They just try to push past them. They don't realize that sometimes the block is the trap. He sat down across from me, his eyes reflecting the deep blue of the sea. Do you miss it? The coffee? The name tag? I looked at my hands. They were steady. No tremors. I thought about the girl who had screamed at a black SUV in the rain. She felt like a character in a book I'd read a long time ago. I miss the cat, I said. We'll get you a new one, he replied. A tiger if you want. You've earned it. The phone on the table buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We found her. The hunt begins tonight. Dante reached for his gun, but I was faster. I picked up the phone and typed a single word, proceed. I looked at Dante and smiled. It wasn't the smile of a waitress. It was the smile of the woman who owned the lane. We aren't hiding anymore, Dante, I said. We're taking. The transition from a waitress uniform to Italian silk wasn't just aesthetic, it was tactical. 3 months after the Mediterranean escape, we weren't just survivors, we were architects. Dante sat at the head of a glass table in our high-security flat in Zurich, but the monitors were mine. The gallows are pivoting, Dante said, his voice reflecting the low hum of the server racks. They've stopped using the docks. They're moving their liquid assets through a series of shell companies based in Luxembourg. I didn't look up from the keyboard. I had spent the last 72 hours mapping the digital ghost of the Gallo family. They aren't moving money, Dante. They're moving a person. Someone the police think died 5 years ago. I hit a key and a grainy black and white surveillance photo filled the primary screen. It showed a man with a distinctive scar across his left eye, stepping out of a bakery in a quiet suburb of Brussels. The ghost of the Gallo patriarch, Dante whispered, his jaw tightening. My father was told he was buried in the foundation of the old stadium. He was, I said, my fingers flying as I pulled up the stadium's historical architectural plans. But the foundation has a drainage vault that wasn't on the official blueprints. He didn't die. He's been running the empire from a hole in the ground for half a decade. I leaned back, the blue light of the monitors reflecting in my eyes. The reason your father's men were compromised wasn't a leak. It was a haunting. He has codes only the original founders knew. If we want to end this, we don't hit their ships. We hit their history. Returning to the city felt like walking back into a nightmare, but this time I wasn't the one being hunted. We wore tactical gear, our faces obscured by thermal dampening masks. The old stadium was a skeleton of rusted iron and crumbling concrete, haunted by the ghosts of 1,000 cheers. The vault is 3 levels below the locker rooms, Dante whispered into the comms. He was a shadow moving through shadows, his rifle an extension of his arm. I held the tablet, watching the heat signatures on the floor above us. 2 guards at the north entrance. 1 more in the stairwell. Dante, if we trip the pressure plate at the base of the stairs, the whole floor is rigged to collapse into the sewer. Can you bypass it? I already did, I said, my heart steady. I rerouted the sensor to the stadium's old scoreboard. If they check the system, all they'll see is a dead bulb. We reached the heavy steel door of the vault. It didn't have a handle, only a biometric scanner that looked like it belonged in a high-tech lab, not a ruin. The DNA is the key, I said. He only opens it for himself. Dante looked at me. And we don't have him. We have the next best thing, I said. I pulled a small, refrigerated vial from my kit, a sample of Gallo's grandson's blood we'd intercepted from a private clinic a week ago. I dropped a single bead onto the scanner. The door groaned, the sound echoing like a dying beast. As it slid open, the air that rushed out smelled of copper, old paper, and something sickly sweet. Inside, the patriarch wasn't a king on a throne. He was a frail old man hooked to a dialysis machine, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling filing cabinets. He looked at us, his eyes cloudy but sharp with a predatory intelligence. "The Moretti boy," the old man rasped. "And the girl from the traffic jam. You've caused quite a mess, Clara." "The mess is over," I said, stepping past Dante. I didn't reach for a gun. I reached for the filing cabinets. "I'm not here for your life, Mr. Gallo. I'm here for your ledger. I want the names of every politician, judge, and police chief you've bought since 1995. The drive back from the stadium was silent. The trunk was filled with the paper trail of a corrupted city. Dante drove with a white-knuckled grip on the wheel, the reality of the betrayal sinking in. "My father's best friend," Dante said, his voice a low growl. "The commissioner. He's on the list." "Everyone is on the list, Dante," I said, looking at the city lights. That's why the world felt so heavy. It was being held down by their greed. What do we do with it? If we give it to the press, they'll bury it. If we give it to the FBI, they'll use it for leverage, I said. We don't give it to anyone. We become the new ledger. We don't need guns to control the city anymore. We just need to remind them that we know their secrets. Suddenly, a pair of headlights flared in the rearview mirror. Not a sedan. Not an SUV. A heavy-duty armored truck. It slammed into our back bumper, the force nearly sending us into a spin. "The cleanup crew," Dante shouted, fighting the wheel. "Gallo must have a fail-safe." "I have the fail-safe," I yelled back. I opened my laptop and initiated the blackout protocol I had staged before we even left the villa. One by one, the city's streetlights began to die. The traffic signals turned black. The bridge we were crossing plunged into absolute darkness. "Kill the lights, Dante," I commanded. He cut our headlights and we became a ghost in the dark. The armored truck behind us roared, its high beams searching the void, but it was blind. Dante swerved, the tires screeching on the edge of the bridge, and we slid into the hidden maintenance ramp I'd scouted on the satellite maps. The truck thundered past us, its driver unable to see the turn. It plowed through the concrete barrier and plummeted into the icy river below. Silence returned to the bridge. Dante looked at me, his face illuminated only by the faint glow of my computer screen. He didn't see a waitress. He didn't even see an accomplice. He saw the new ruler of the city. "What's the next move, Whisper?" he asked. I closed the laptop with a sharp click. "We make a phone call. It's time the mayor learned how to take orders from someone who doesn't use a gun." The digital throne was cold. From my high-rise sanctuary, I watched the city through 10,000 lenses, my fingers dancing across the keys like a ghost playing a piano. We had the mayor, the commissioner, and the Gallo assets, but power has a way of attracting the very thing it tries to replace. "Clara, look at this," Dante said, his voice tight. He pointed to a secondary monitor. A fleet of unmarked black vans was moving through the district, bypassing every digital trap I'd set. They weren't using the city's grid. They were on a localized, closed-circuit frequency. "The FBI's specialized task force," I whispered. "They aren't looking for a paper trail. They're looking for us." "We have to move," Dante said, reaching for his tactical vest. "There's nowhere to go," I replied, my eyes fixed on the screen. "They've frozen our offshore accounts. They've blacklisted our passports. Someone in our inner circle didn't just leak our location, they sold our souls." The elevator hummed. It was coming up. My heart, once a frantic bird, was now a stone in my chest. I looked at the black box containing the Gallo ledger, the physical evidence of every sin committed in this city. It was our shield and our death warrant. The doors opened. It wasn't a swarm of agents. It was a single man. The commissioner. The man Dante's father had trusted with his life. He looked tired, his trench coat damp with the persistent city rain. "Dante. Clara," he said, his voice heavy. "It's over. The Bureau has everything. They don't want the ledger. They want the people who hold it." Dante raised his weapon, the muzzle steady. "You sold us out to save your own skin, didn't you? After 40 years of Moretti money filling your pockets." "I did it to save the city from what you've become," the commissioner replied, looking directly at me. "Dante was a soldier. But you, Clara, you've become a monster. You don't kill bodies, you kill lives. You've paralyzed the government. You've turned the law into your personal plaything." "The law was already a toy," I said, stepping forward. "I just took it out of the hands of children." A red dot appeared on the commissioner's chest. Then another on Dante's forehead. Snipers from the adjacent rooftop. The trap was absolute. "Give me the ledger," the commissioner said. and I'll make sure you both get a quiet cell instead of a shallow grave. Dante looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. He was ready to die, ready to turn this penthouse into a pyre. But I wasn't. I had learned the most important lesson of the underworld: when you can't win the game, you break the board. Take it, I said, sliding the black box across the marble floor. Dante's jaw dropped. Clara, no. The commissioner smiled, a greedy, relieved expression. He knelt to pick it up. As his fingers touched the handle, I entered the final command on my laptop. The ledger isn't in that box, Commissioner, I said, my voice as cold as the Zurich wind. What's in that box is a high-frequency transmitter. The moment you touch it, it triggers a global upload. Every name, every bank account, every recorded bribe is being sent to every major news outlet on the planet simultaneously. The commissioner froze. The color drained from his face. If we go down, the entire city goes down with us, I continued. By tomorrow morning, there won't be a police force, a court system, or a mayor's office left standing. The dragons will have nothing to rule but ashes. The snipers didn't fire. They were waiting for orders from men who were currently watching their own careers evaporate on their phones. I walked to the window, looking out at the city I had brought to its knees. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small silver lighter. I flicked it open. Dante, let's go, I said. We walked past the shattered commissioner, out into the hallway and down the service stairs. We didn't take the motorcycle. We didn't take an SUV. We walked into the crowded subway station, blending into the sea of people who had no idea that their world had just been reset. 6 months later. A small, quiet town on the coast of South America. No high-rises. No monitors. Just the sound of the waves and the smell of salt. I sat at a wooden table in a small cafe, a simple book in my hand. A man sat down across from me, a fresh scar across his ribs barely visible beneath his linen shirt. He pushed a cup of coffee toward me. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I looked at the coffee, a simple black brew in a chipped ceramic mug. I didn't spill it. I took a slow, deliberate sip. The whisper was dead. The boss was a ghost. But as I looked at the headlines on the local newspaper, "Worldwide corruption scandal topples governments," I knew that the girl who had blocked an SUV in the rain had finally finished her commute. I closed the book. I looked at Dante and smiled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't a variable or a victim. I was free. If this story broke your heart the way it broke mine, leave a like so I know to tell more stories about the high price of truth and the power of a woman who refuses to be moved.